So I'm going to start off with saying, what does sustainability mean to manufacturing industry? And actually, we go back to the definition. The definition of sustainability, it seems to be to maintain, to support, or endure. Maybe the enduring seems to be one of the things that is affecting us. But if we go back to the Brundtland report, he says sustainable development is the kind of development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. Very difficult to try and understand that, how that represents itself into industry sometimes. But the common focus that we see at the moment is all about environmental sustainability. So this is one definition I picked up. It's the rate of renewable resource harvest, pollution creation, and non-renewable resource depletion that can be continued indefinitely. And quite honestly, to me, that seems to rule out the use of fossil fuels. But then, what's it trying to do? It's trying to make us moving away from this take, make, consume, dispose society to extending life, reusing, refurbishing and recycling. And we get the picture there from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation of the circular economy. All of these things are talked about within our industry and within our business. But actually, society is expecting much more from industry than that environmental sustainability item. It's a balance of actually three factors, and even this conference has not really focused on all of those three. There's the economic, there's the social, and there's the environmental. And you can see there that the World Bank Group is really pushing us in that direction as industries to think about all of those particular items that are listed there. There's a lot to think about. And it's very important for competitive industries. We've heard about the automotive industry that the competition is hard. Within Europe, there's 12 or so big competitors, all competing in the same market space. Several of them have been mentioned. A couple of them have actually been present at this conference as well. So what should we do? We must satisfy the increasing demands and expectations of customers and society. People are looking towards the automotive industry often to provide a wide diversity of expectation, satisfaction. The consequent demands of regulation. So often regulation is there to demand what, or regulate what the actual customer is able to demand and how to use it. And we'll come on to how regulation can be a help or a hindrance later. And all of that, we have to do that whilst respecting the environment. But we have to do it whilst remaining profitable. We are competitive businesses, and we have a responsibility and an expectation from our shareholders and also society. Please don't forget that society is always chasing tax from us as well, as with a number of companies have found recently. It's very important to be paying your taxes and in the right country. So what else does it mean? So actually, to Toyota, we had the opportunity to really go back and look at a little bit hard at ourselves. As you'll probably be aware, we had a recall crisis in the US, and very soon afterwards we had a tsunami, a natural disaster. But both of those were very big change points within our organisation. And after that, Akio Toyoda, our chairman and chief executive, looks forward to the next 100 years of business. And he wants that to be a profitable business. And there's a couple of quotes he made there. We're now more attuned to the importance of sustainable growth. An increase in production does not necessarily equate to growth. And also this year, on the 5th anniversary of when he attended a congressional hearing about the quality crisis in the United States, he was looking already forward to the next 100 years with the launch of the new technology, the Mirai, which is the hydrogen fuel cell. So he's really thinking long term. How do we do that? Well, we're trying to apply our guiding principles. Our guiding principles, one is called monozukuri, and this basically is about sustainable manufacturing or craftsmanship. It's about that passion in the product, the passion about making that product and making it in the best possible way. Also, the application of the Toyota production system. And that means, of course, the minimization of waste. And there are 7 different types of waste that are identified within that system. Also, we talk about Meyaruka. Meyaruka is about visualization. So when we're wasting something, we actually do need to make sure that people can understand it, can see the waste. And then once you can see the waste, you can do something about it. And basically, that all wraps up in this very comprehensive vision that we've got at the moment, which we talk about better cars, better lives, and better business. And in fact, our global vision now highlights 3 items that we should be looking for. We should be looking safety of our products. We should be looking at fun to drive. We want people to enjoy the freedom of personal mobility. But equally, we want to think about the environment. So those are the 3 big headline factors for Toyota. Of course, we always do that through challenging goals and a relentless follow-up. It's one of those things, if you work for Toyota, you very rarely have a good news story inside the business. You say, right, we've actually saved 5% today. And somebody will say, well, actually, couldn't it have been 6 or 7? You know, there's always this big effort to go further. And our ambition has been stated quite publicly that we would like to go towards 0 emissions. And then we've got continuous innovation and the application of science and technology. We're a very science-based company. We work upon what we are able to do using our core strengths, and we actually only talk about, usually, things about what we've already done rather than things that we might plan in the future. So we tend to be quite conservative with a small c. So what issues should manufacturing industry consider when we talk about sustainability? Here are a few. I won't read them all out, but this is society. So society thinking there about all of these things that are cropping up. We talk about population increase, urbanisation. We talk about education, one of the themes of the previous speaker. Also air quality. Human migration is another thing where people are moving from one country to another. We've got some very big geopolitical issues. This morning we heard about the CRM, the Critical Raw Materials List. Where is that list coming from? Why is that being discussed right now? Well, it's partly because of material scarcity, but also it's about material security, having your hands on those materials so that your economy, your country can actually go through. So there is very much a political dimension to some of these things as well. And needless to say, also we have issues on things like conflict materials as well. So there's the human and social welfare dimensions as well, not just the environmental dimensions. Regulation. Here is a list of some of the regulation that affects us in our industry. And it's pretty comprehensive, as you can see here. And then finally, we've got the customer. The customer is very important, as we've heard. We need to listen to what the customer is expecting from us. But actually, they are expecting contribution to the quality of life. They're interested in the specification of the vehicle as they receive it. But they are interested also in connecting their car to the internet as they're driving along. They're also still interested in value for money. So they're expecting cheaper and cheaper products, but with more and more in the car. So one of the other issues there is fashion and taste as well. So that's quite a difficult one to be following because people are expecting products to be changing on a regular basis. But when we're dealing with all of these items, we find a lot of potential conflicts and they require a lot of balance and compromise when we consider them. So some of the examples that we might see for the automotive industry, there's many, but those are some of them. So if you look there, Mark's been talking about centralized production versus distributed production. That's a very important argument about whether we make big factories or small factories and where they are. That links to the other one there about just-in-time and logistics. Just think about what are the logistics problem the car manufacturer has to think about in its ability to keep its factories running when people close down the Channel Port and the Channel Tunnel. That's created an awful lot of problems for Toyota UK over the last couple of days. But all of these things need thinking about, and they're not easy balances to be making because they must be made at all times simultaneously in a large extent. I'll take 2 of those forward to the next slide. So one of the items is the use of environmentally friendly, or the development of environmentally friendly products versus the use of rare earth and of precious metals. Actually, we have a paradox. Environmentally friendly products need to potentially have potentially undesirable materials from a sustainability point of view, things like rare earth materials and precious materials, for example. Our typical countermeasures are 2. Firstly, we want to develop recovery and recycling technologies, taking the life cycle angle and try to understand that beyond what is normally our core business. And you heard the programme that we've been doing with Loughborough earlier today. That's an example of what we're trying to do. And in Japan, we take it where our research and development expertise really is. Actually, they're doing a lot on the recycling of rare earth materials, magnets, batteries and things like that. Also, we're working extremely hard to prevent the next generation of cars containing so much of those materials. And actually, that means using less rare earths in those magnets, for example. And we're having some degree of success on there. But that action will not be seen within the recycling industry until 15 or 20 years from today. Also, we have this conflict here about electrification, so electric vehicles, plug-in hybrid vehicles, and even fuel cell vehicles versus primary energy. So actually, there's a shift of environmental impact from tailpipe to the fuel supply. So actually, we can make our cars zero emissions at the point of use in the city, but somebody has to generate the electricity that either makes the hydrogen or physically powers or charges up the battery. And again, our countermeasures there are we have to do some unusual partnerships. At the moment, we're trying to work with an integrated or comprehensive approach with both governmental people, the fuel producers, and the distributors of fuel. At the end of the day, Toyota and the other automotive manufacturers are not going to start to develop their own shall we say, chain of fuel suppliers by the side of the highway. We also want to create demand signals to fuel supply partners, if you like, by sharing IPR. So actually with the Mirai, which is our new fuel cell vehicle, we've actually shared over 5,600 patents, and they're royalty-free for a period of years to try and generate other companies' interest in making those types of vehicles, and then we can build up some demand, which will make the fuel suppliers think about investing more money into the infrastructure network. So some hard examples. So Greg asked me to put this slide in, basically just to remind you that we're still working very hard on the production side. You can see there that as a consolidated Toyota in Europe since 2001, we've been able to reduce energy, for example, by 45%. That's despite us building more of the components within the car, increased vertical integration. But also on the left-hand side there, you can see the percentage of the energy or resources that we're using compared to our competitors in Europe. And this is compared against ACEA data, the Automotive Trade Association. So you can see as an example there that we're only using 42% of the energy. Oh, sorry, it's the other way around. We're using 42% less energy than our competitors to produce one car. And actually, we're only producing a third of the amount of waste to produce one car. We introduced a hybrid. So we were the pioneers. In 1997 in Japan, we actually launched the Prius. Since that time now, you can see here that we've had 7.3 million hybrids, 27 different models in 90 different countries, and greater than 50 million tons of CO2 have been saved, estimated by the calculation method. So hybrid has contributed very strongly. But actually, that wasn't a profitable business when we started. And we're also entering now demonstration projects. So, for example, we're entering the world of making our vehicles part of the smart grid. We're working with the World Business Council for Sustainable Development to develop sustainable mobility projects within cities, where the first one is in Bangkok, where we're taking leadership particularly. And there's real-world pilots of last kilometre mobility. So again, similar to Marks and Spencer's, we're doing some actual experimentation out in the market, and that's with the vehicle at the bottom, the small vehicle at the bottom left slide there. It's called the iRoad. You can hire that as part of a car-sharing agreement in Grenoble. And we're also contributing to intelligent transport systems. That's systems which will actually be able to integrate with smartphones and what have you, navigate you around traffic and all of those types of goodly things. What else have we been doing? So, or will we be doing, or how do we see the world? The first one is our Powertrain strategy. We do not believe that there is a single answer out there. Their answer will be many. And actually, electric vehicles are very good, and they're very good particularly for small vehicles and cities. We also have hybrid and plug-in hybrid vehicles, which we believe will be the vehicles of the future. And towards bigger vehicles and longer distances, fuel cells are a real attractive option. Actually, we've been developing now fuel cells for 20 years for application in motor vehicles. And that's a long time of experimentation. And actually, this vehicle will be available in Europe as of autumn this year in small quantities. We are talking about, again, an experimentation project, but there will be some in London, there'll be some in Denmark, and there'll be some in Germany. And the idea of that is to work with countries which have already made a commitment towards the hydrogen economy and are putting up fuel stations around the cities to try and experiment with this new fuel source to try and show its benefit. So, is there a view for future for sustainability in manufacturing? And this is a personal view, as Steve mentioned before. I want to say this is personal. It's not always Toyota exactly, but I would say potentially yes, over a mid to long term basis. It's not going to be a quick fix. I feel very positive. I feel quite, shall we say, pleased that I can see activity in recycling, pollution prevention. They're all advancing quite quickly, and we're able now to take and identify methods to handle negative impacts of some of those processes. The companies are beginning to show some flexibility in business models. So we're seeing slowly that as the first speaker this afternoon mentioned, that car sharing is now one of the things that's on the lips of many of the OEMs. But actually, it still remains unclear if we can tap into that societal behavioural change that is necessary actually to dramatically change anything in the short term. This is going to be the difficulty. We build the car, but we're not the guy with the foot on the accelerator pedal. We're not the guy who decides whether to use the car or the bicycle. Actually, we can give advice, but we can't actually mandate it or control it. We can't control our customers. But I do believe we have a problem with the energy, and energy could be a major bottleneck. On the supply side, we've got climate change. Regulation is now forcing us to cut down on CO2, and particularly fossil fuels. Actually, some of the oil companies have said that they want to see higher taxation of their product right now, basically because they want to get a voice at the table for this lobby. There's a shift away from nuclear power. Basically, I think it's only the UK that's thinking about building some nuclear power stations now, but Belgium, Germany, Japan, they're all closing their stations down or moderating their output quite considerably. There's a resistance to renewables. People don't want wind turbines in their back garden. They are sceptical about photovoltaics. Why? Because there's a variation or instability of supply. So, for example, solar only happens during the day. It's predictable. We know when the daylight should be there, but actually in what quantity, how much cloud base or whatever. And actually, during the day is not always the time we want to use it. And wind can be very variable, as you can imagine. But there's also a lack of large-scale renewable storage, and there's a need to reinforce the infrastructure. And I would sound a note of caution here on the use of car batteries for physical storage of energy at the end of the life. Please do the maths. How many kilowatts can we provide? How many big spaces would we need to put all those batteries together just to keep one small city alive? It's a big challenge. So please treat that one with caution. It's a good idea, but it may not be the best or only solution. On the demand side, energy efficiency should be a very good key. We've got ESOS in the UK, the Energy Efficiency Directive, which is encouraging companies to take energy efficiency action. So that can be a positive downward trend. But on the opposite side, we've got population increase, and we've got the increase in the developed economy when we consider the global side, so global viewpoint. So actually, we're going to see world demand for electricity, for example, or energy, to increase dramatically. Climate change, actually, I would have liked to have had air conditioning in my house last week, and I'm sure a lot of you would have liked to have done that, but people are going to start to use this, and there's going to be an increased cooling demand if there is this predicted increase in temperature. There's also the direct or indirect project electrification. So we talked about fuels, we've talked about fuel cells, heat pumps, they run off electricity. And actually, this week, there was an article in the paper about EFAN, I think it's called, a plane by Airbus, which is an electric-only plane. So it's coming, but it's all electric that we're going towards. So the net result for me is that it's likely to be that energy improvement will not be enough to offset the demand increase. So what conditions are going to be necessary? I think we need supportive regulation and consumer signals. We come back to the education and awareness. We need to teach people why or what we need to do. We need to modify society's expectations and behaviours, and that I have no answer for today particularly. Global harmonisation and standardisation we believe is important. If you make a low emission zone in Stockholm or in London, if they're for a different specification of vehicle, the car manufacturers are going to struggle to be able to provide that specification of vehicle. And today, every city is thinking about a different specification. We want enlightened investors and shareholders. We want people to be judging their investment decisions based upon the quality of our activities and towards sustainability. Because after all, we want to still be there in 100 years. We need collaboration and integrated comprehensive approaches. Honestly, no, I don't believe any one sector is going to be able to solve this. We're going to have to work together, and that, as somebody said earlier, unusual partnerships may be necessary, but certainly a lot more cooperation across sectors is going to be need to be encouraged and actually followed. We need to avoid this. This is the chicken and the egg. We're producing the car, but somebody's got to be actually delivering the fuel station so that you can actually fill up on the road. And that is one company that is investing, that's Air Liquid, and they're investing in these types of stations. So my open question, as the previous speaker also asked some questions, but how will or how can your sector or company respond? Finally, our chairman likes to think about what's the ideal situation. And he says the ideal car should be basically the flying carpet. You click your fingers, it arrives, you get on. Autonomous, doesn't use any energy, and actually physically doesn't cause any pollution or congestion. Actually, this is the Lexus hoverboard, which was just released on YouTube. Check it out. It's going to be quite interesting how this story develops over the next few weeks. But allegedly, and I don't know the answer, but this is based in Barcelona, evidently, and it is a maglev-type skateboard as a demonstration project. So thank you very much for your attention.